this entire thing in this kind of petty back and forth. Oh, I would have beat Trump. And no one fucking believes that at all. Guy, you drove to, you had a noble career. Your last act was terrible. Just get out of the way. The party's moving on. I mean, they're really moving on. And it's very sad that, but that's just where we are. And he created this himself. He has nobody to blame but himself. Nobody.
James, I wish I could say something good about this week. Maybe in the course of this show, we'll think of something. But the Trump inaugural and subsequent actions were dark, depressing, demoralizing, and not surprising. Trump dominates Washington. I've been in this town for, 55 years? I stopped counting. And he dominates today like no other president I've seen. And he dominates with a reckless disregard for truth and, more importantly, for the rule of law.
Well, I guess, we sit here and you look at the crypto giant grift. It's such a giant grift. Now the other crypto people are mad because it's such a grift, he's infringing on their territory.
Right.
You look at the pardons of the January 6th violent criminals who assaulted police officers. They've all been pardoned. Just walk away. All right. You look at his executive order suspending every person that has anything to do with DEI. Okay. You look at all of his stuff that is starting, deportations, God knows what not. The total confusion over TikTok, which he knows nothing. And what is the response? The Democrats or the press doesn't have a way to deal with this, because usually people would put something out and it would be the story of the day, and then you could follow that and they'd defend the story, or people would attack it and you'd go ahead. Now he has 10 things out there. Of all of the things that you mentioned, what should the Democrats focus on? What they will end up doing is what they always do. They will focus on all 10. And they will do no good. To me, the biggest one was the Secretary of Treasury, a billionaire, telling the Senate committee that we can't have a minimum wage raise. Minimum wages last raised in 2009. I'd love to know the salaries of the salaries of high-income people since 2009, people over $1 million, how their wealth has grown, and what happened to people who lower part of hourly wages grown. Of course, we would know the answer to that without a doubt. And the hardest thing to do going forward, and I don't have a lot of confidence that we can do that we can just pick some things to the exclusion of 20 other things. Because people will say, well, how could you not say something about that? Well, it's not that I don't think it's a big issue. I don't think, but if I say something about that, and I say something about this, and I say something about this and that, and I say something about that and this, I've lost my ability to communicate. And this is an unprecedented way that they're going about this. And Steve Bannon, I think the guy was right. He said, we're just going to flood the zone with shit. And we're now flooded with shit. And we just don't have a response. We just don't.
Well, James, you offered a response. You had a piece in which you talked about, I think, 5 issues: raising the minimum wage, expanding affordable health care, codifying Roe. Focus on those 5 issues. There are other things. Pulling out of the World Health Organization is a terrible idea. That's like underlining every line in a book. You can't do it. I think the focus that you talked about, maybe you want to change 1 or 2, but that's what Democrats ought to do. They're not going to win. They ought to understand that their role is to oppose. And Trump is going to do outrageous things every goddamn day. And I think that Treasury Secretary, you can't raise the minimum wage, which is $7.25, but you can extend a massive tax cut for billionaires like Scott Bessent and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk.
So I saw something interesting this morning. I was looking at Morning Joe. They actually said some things that I thought people should listen to. the first thing is when somebody runs for Democratic nomination in 2028, the first thing that I want to hear out of their mouth is I'm taking our message everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. I mean Joe Rogan, I mean Fox News, I mean Sunday morning shows, I mean everything. I'm proud of what we have to offer. I'm going to go out and promote it, and I'm going to go out and defend it, and I'm going to go out and attack them, and I'm going to do that all the time. Secondly, the, all of our events are going to be fun. They're going to be, there's going to be great music. There's going to be great, you know, comedians that are going to tell jokes before I come up. It's going to be an entirely different thing. We're dour, okay? It's always somebody's in a pissy mood or somebody's this. And we're just not connecting. We're not connecting at all. And then we strategically don't go on places that accentuate certain parts of popular culture, particularly male popular culture. And the result is just the same fucking thing. It's just this cultural NPR combined with which people detest, combined with an ability to try to drink water out of I hate the metaphor, but more like out of a waterfall. Okay, trying to get a sip of water out of Niagara Falls. And it's just going to require some discipline, and it's going to require a change of attitude. It just really is. And I think it's right. I think that the whole, we didn't lose the election because of it, but we lost the election because we are playing the Super Bowl. The game is coming up. Okay, we played our Super Bowl with our ninth best quarterback. Understand that. And with our ninth best quarterback, with no time to prepare a campaign, without even addressing the central issue that the American people are concerned about, we came within a point and a half. So don't kid yourself. We're not starting near at zero, but in order to get off the ground, you have to have a strategy, and everything is not a strategy. And not talking to people or just regurgitating sound bites is not a strategy either.
Well, I agree with much of that, except, I mean, don't talk about 2028, for God's sakes. There's so much that's going to happen
Well,
before
I'm
that.
just saying our
That'll take
20.
it. No, I'm not addressing you. I'm addressing what you said, they said. I think what you need to do are three things, and I don't think they're hard, two of which you just mentioned. I think one of which is that you need to reach out to different media, different outposts, different audiences. That, Pete Buttigieg has done that, a few others. Most Democrats don't do that. I think, secondly, picking up on what we talked about earlier, you need to focus on certain issues. And I think, and it has to be selective. And, by those issues may be different by 2027, but they aren't now. And thirdly, however, the Democrats, this is mainly outside of elected office. There has to be a stronger, for lack of a better term, resistance. Trump 2.0 is far more prepared, lethal, and dangerous than Trump 1.0. And Democrats just don't have the luxury and donors of being down, despondent. To paraphrase Nancy Pelosi's daughter in another matter, these people, these politicians and donors, put on your big person pants and fight, because there's going to be a hell of a lot of things to fight. That's different than having a 24-point agenda.
Uh, it is, and I'm going to, by the end of this month, I'm going to have a pretty good idea because we have an American Bridge Conference in South Florida coming up, and there'll be the donor element of the Democratic Party will be very well represented. I have no idea, and I'm really kind of curious to see what their mood is. But what I'm saying is anybody that promotes the message of this party or what's going on has got to do so aggressively, creatively, and it's got to not swing at every pitch. That's all. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And I'm saying
I think you're right.
it takes plate discipline.
A couple points. I really want to get to the pardons because that's so important by both presidents. But one, the bishop at the National Cathedral yesterday at the National Prayer Breakfast called on the leaders of the country, including the president, to have mercy on those who are scared, migrants, LGBTQ people. Tim Russert used to always tease me about the Episcopalians, my people. I got a note from an old friend, Peggy Lewis, this morning, who said Tim Russert was happy yesterday with your people. The woman said exactly what she should have said. It wasn't insulting. Trump, in his fury, was outraged. Now, we know, James, there are millions of people who are scared. It doesn't take much to find that out. So what's he upset about? Is it wrong to say that you're going to have mercy on people who are scared? Unless you're a thug, he certainly had mercy on the January 6 people. So I say 3 cheers for my Episcopalian bishop.
Well, okay, think of the Trump and think of the bishop. Okay, I'm not. Of course, what she said is totally correct. It's theologically as solid as anything you can do. Here is a woman clergyman, and Trump's got to sit there, and she basically is lecturing him, and he would have.
He's in her house.
You know what? He doesn't go to in his people's mind. They see that and they said, "Look at that overeducated. Thinks she's some kind of a priest or something like that." Election the president of the United States. I agree with what she said totally. I'm glad she said it, but it's sort of part of the culture war too. And she seemed like an eminently well-educated, fine clergy person, but she's probably not the best messenger in the world.
Well, no, she played her role. That's a different role. I think it would be a mistake for Hakeem Jeffries to focus primarily on LGBTQ rights. No question.
That's why they didn't like her because of her gender and her position,
right,
and everything about her.
Exactly. Okay. I'm surprised he even went. He just went for show because he really doesn't believe in going.
But,
James, we have to talk about the pardons. The pardons and commutations of the January 6th insurrectionists. It says everything about Trump's view of the rule of law. It only exists when it helps him. I literally mean that. He doesn't believe in the rule of law unless it advantages him. These were violent insurrectionists, at least a number of them were, who tried to stage a coup. They wanted to overturn a fair election. It was violent. They stormed the Capitol. 5 police officers died as a result of this. There were hundreds of injuries. They wanted to kill Vice President Pence and Speaker Pelosi. This isn't some kind of liberal narrative. A very conservative judge, Royce Lambus, sentenced him and said it was one of the worst acts he had seen in this country. And the violence-loving Proud Boys and Oath Keepers who got a free pass from Trump this week, they're going to feel emboldened now, James. And I think we want to have our friends Kathleen Belew, or what's the name of that terrific woman who writes about white nationalist Christians, Catherine Stewart. We ought to talk to them about that because I have no doubt the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and all the others were just giving a new lease on life by Donald Trump this week.
Of course, everything you say is true. And of course, we had a slew of pardons. President Biden pardoned a bunch of people. Of course, all this mostly a result of Trump. But I'd like to know how many presidential pardons have been issued prior to, January the 1st of this year, and how many have been issued after January 1st this year. Right. I mean, we've had the pardon power was something that people didn't think about that much. All right, there was some controversial pardons, people could, but they were few, they were far between, and at some level, they were defensible on some grounds. Okay, but the
dope smokers or whatever have you.
Yeah, the times that it came up were now we've like completely the presidency and the pardon power are not what it used to be. It's now just bring them in here, sign them, and shove them out. And I don't think this is a positive trend, but I don't know if that it's not going to continue.
Oh, James, it's going to continue for a long time. I think the Biden pardons of Mark Milley, Liz Cheney, Tony Fauci, the January 6th committee, it made me uncomfortable. And I actually hope a couple of them reject the pardon, which you can do. But Trump and his band made clear they want revenge. They're going after Mark Milley, Liz Cheney, and Tony Fauci, though there is no case whatsoever. So at least I understand the logic of that. Right wingers like Jim Banks, a new senator from Indiana, said Liz Cheney ought to be held accountable. For what? For what should Liz Cheney be held accountable for? It's nonsense. I must say, I think that Trump's pardon of his family is a different matter and totally indefensible. On this show, we both kind of uncomfortably agreed the Hunter Biden pardon was understandable because Trump might use it. If Hunter Biden goes to prison, Trump could say, hey, I'm going to send him to X, Y, or Z, depending on what Biden says or does. That's what Trump does. But to pardon his brother, his sister, his brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and others, who it's a preemptive pardon, they haven't been even charged with anything. Is it as bad as Trump's sleazy pardon of Roger Stone and Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn, all of whom have been convicted of something? Probably not. But I really think I'm really upset that Biden did that.
Well, this is the kind of truth of where we are. Right? In all of it, we know Biden. Actually, we know you and I know him personally. And I think it's fair to say that we're a long time at some level admirers of Joe Biden. And what he's done to himself is no one wants to hear from this guy anymore. Okay? Right. Just go to your condo in Rehoboth and stay there. And that's not because we're bad people or we mean people. It was all his doing. All his doing. This entire thing. In this kind of petty back and forth, I would have beat Trump. And no one fucking believes that at all. And then fighting with Joe Biden and Alexander Pelosi. I mean, just look, guy, you had a noble career. Your last act was terrible. Just get out of the way. The party's moving on. I mean, they're really moving on. And it's very sad but that's just where we are. And he created this himself. He has nobody to blame but himself.
Right.
Nobody.
Every interview he gave to a friendly interviewer was a mistake. He just dug himself deeper in a hole. He ought to go away, raise money for a library at either Delaware or Penn. But Joe Biden really has no role to play in the national dialogue now, and that is sad.
It is fair. What it is. If he tries to play a role, it'll be a negative role.
It will be. It will be.
The party just like, hey man, let's get out of the way. I mean, it's one. If I've said it and continue to believe, it's one of the most tragic stories in American politics of my lifetime. It can't be tragic unless I don't say I guess he's the victim of it or whatever. The central character is actually a good guy who did it to himself.
Yeah,
that's what's so unbelievably stunning about this.
Yeah. James, man. History may be a little bit kinder to him. You know what? It takes a hell of a long time. You and I and Joe Biden ain't going to be around to see that.
No.
So.